So you're probably wondering right now, shouldn't this be Light? Shouldn't this be possibly Hikari? To that, you would actually be right. But there was actually a special reason for why I decided to have Haruna be the first one before them. And that is the person who helped me create this character, their birthday was this month. And I thought, in honor of that, in honor of them helping me create the inspiration for this best girl, my personal favorite character of all time, I thought I might as well do this first before April ends, so that is what we are doing. So, Wawias, allow me to introduce to you my personal best girl, favorite OC of all time. This one is called Haruna, the Kitsune Angel / QB, and I'm going to go a little in depth with her, as well as show you guys the Dynasty Warriors version that I ended up creating, and of course I'll show pictures of her Hybrid's Tale and Legacy of the Hybrids version as well. So without further ado, let's get into this action. Okay, so first and foremost, let's go help out Tuzaku real quick, because definitely need to do that real fast, because it looks like he might be struggling. That was a long line for him to just say, hey, I'm in trouble, help me. But yes, as I mentioned, this best girl here is Haruna. She is known as the Kitsune Angel, aka a Kyuubi, who is a very dangerous creature. I will also say real quick, she is a halfling character. She is half human, half ninsu. So those who don't know what ninsu is, this is a word that I ended up creating. That is a character who ends up having just animal features. Like for her, she would have the fox tail and ears and stuff, but because she is half human, she's able to retract those whenever she wants at will. Now, the special thing about Kyuubis, however, is that, as you all know, Kyuubis are known as nine-tailed foxes. You can know from, for instance, Kyuubi. For those of you who are Warriors fans, you know Kyuubi as the Kyuubi who has the 9 tails from her. She has 9 tails on her butt, and that is literally what Haruna has. But with each tail, she gets more powerful. With each tail, she becomes more dangerous. With each tail, she starts to lose herself more and more. She starts to lose her sense. She starts to lose everything. She ends up still knowing restraint when it is necessary, but she is still someone who is not able to control her anger. She's not able to control her emotions or anything, and that is when the Kyuubi form of hers starts happening. So no, she does not end up taking the form of a fox or anything like that. She ends up just becoming with more tails. She ends up becoming more violent. She ends up becoming more powerful, and she ends up becoming more uncontrollable. No, there's no way of mastering this. She literally cannot master this at all. This is just something that is always going to be a threat to her and everyone else around her if she ends up getting to that point. So, with that being said, let's talk about a little bit of her childhood. So, the childhood, as I'm sure, as you know, a lot of people who have OCs tend to have a little bit of sad or tragic backstories. Well, welcome to Haruna. She is one of those people who don't have a great backstory. Granted, it is not the saddest one in the world, but it is still a pretty damn sad one. So, Kyuubis, as I mentioned, are known as immensely dangerous, and they're also known as to be very, very rare creatures as well. Yes, there's more than one, but they are a very, very rare and damn near extinct breed at this point. So there are people who sometimes go around hunting Kyuubi for sport or for more reasons that are good in their eyes but are bad for the Kyuubi and probably anyone else who disagrees with their views. So for the people who decided to hunt these Kyuubi, or at least the ones that we are specifically aiming at right now, had views. They wanted to get rid of the Kyuubis because something bad happened to them in their lives because of a Kyuubi, and they want to make sure no one else has to suffer from those. So a lot of you could probably think, okay, this is kind of understandable. So they ended up going through something tragic, and so now they want to just rid the world of Kyuubis because, oh, well, something bad happened to them, so they want to make sure nothing bad happens to other people. But here enters a young girl, Haruna. Not this version, obviously. She is a kid at the point where this happens. She ends up being found out as as someone in her family as a Kyuubi. So she is the father from the family is a Kyuubi. She ends up having the markings and everything. The markings that she has on her face are ones that only a Kyuubi could have. So her and her father are the only ones who are known to have it. She has an older sister. No, she is not part Kyuubi as far as I have planned right now. The mother is also just pure human. She has no, Kyuubi relation to anyone. She is, like I said, that is where the halfling part comes in for Haruna. She is part human, while the father is Ninsu, who is part Kyuubi. Also, I was tempted to also just make the father a halfling as well, which I probably will do, so he could also have like a little bit in depth of like how has he been around as long if he has like the ears and everything popping out and everything, and also the racism and speciesism and all that kind of stuff that's happening in my story and everything. For those who don't know about it, I will be sure to also, if I remember, which I'll probably try to remember because it's actually pretty important because it sets the tone of the story, I will introduce you all to Benita, who already did a backstory 4 years ago, and it is still relevant to this day, aside from some small little tweaks I made here and there. Obviously, the design has also been changed. But aside from that, if you all want to go check that out, that will set the tone of how the racism and speciesism is and everything, and how they set ninsu, like I said, the people who have the animal features and all that, how they are shown to look and everything like that. I made Taro have QB markings. That was a mistake. I will be sure to change that before I ever show her off, which will be a long time from now, so don't worry about that. But yeah, so that sets the tone. It's a very specious, racist kind of world at the beginning of Hybrid's Tale and everything like that. And so in comes Haruna. Again, like I said, she's QBs are no different. They are still part ninsu and everything, so even though they are strong and feared, they are still hated upon. And especially for the one who wants to rid the world of QBs. So there comes in the part where she is a child, and what they decide to do to hide her from being a QB at the time, because they're still worried, and like I said, the racism and speciesism of my story is at an all-time high at this point. They're still children, but there's still a lot of hate going around. Humans are very harsh towards other people, like Kaijima, who are demons. Demon people, like, for instance, I have a succubus character. There's, like, succubus, like, those kinds of characters are demons / Kaijima. And then they are very racist towards those kinds of people, Kaijima and ninsu, mostly the ninsu, because they are more weaker of the people, and they are more frowned upon than anything, because the Kaijima, at least, are intimidating. The ninsu, not so much. They are very weak people, as I said. There are only a few type that actually have, like, strength or anything like that, like the Kyuubi, so they are very feared. So what do the father and little Haruna do? They unfortunately have to put makeup on their faces to hide the fact that they have QB markings, which make them look like halflings. So they end up being able to pass off as humans for a decent amount of time. But unfortunately, some information leaks out that there is a QB in the area, if not two. And so this person hears about it, the one who has been trying to hunt down the QB and try to rid the world of them. He ends up hearing about this news, and then eventually ends up locating Haruna and her father's location. Or just the whole entire family, I guess you could say. So, as you can probably understand, the person is fully aware of how strong a QB is. This person does not play fair. This person indeed plays dirty and needs to play dirty, of course, because at the time they're a regular human, and the other person is a strong QB who can end up doing it. So, they end up ambushing the father and the mother. So, they end up baiting the father with the mother, who ends up being severely injured at the time, and then the father, of course, in his loving, caring ways, ends up trying to run and help his wife as best he can. And, of course, that ends up leading into disaster as he and his wife get ambushed by the person who is trying to kill them. Woo! Sorry, I am in the middle of also playing this at the same time. So yes, that ends up happening, and then the father ends up dying along with the mother. And obviously, at the time, before any of this happens, the father is fully aware, and he warns the children, do not leave the house by any circumstance. Something is wrong with your mother. I gotta go find her and everything. So Haruna and Taro end up staying at the house. Taro, obviously the older sister, looking after Haruna, even though she is immensely worried and everything like that. So they end up staying at the house. Time passes, and they end up and Haruna, actually being the rebellious little sister that she is, decides, I hit the Muso button. Maybe I can hit somebody with this. Rip. So, yes, the little girl ends up trying to run into the forest, trying to find the father and mother, and unfortunately what she finds are 2 dead, bloody corpses on the ground. And, of course, this ends up leading to her screaming and everything, like she's traumatized, her parents are dead, she lost her parents. And then, in order to realizing, like, oh no, my sister could be in danger too because I left her. And so, the sister ends up running back. Thankfully, though, Taro is okay. She ends up actually leaving the house trying to chase after Haruna, who is too fast for her because Haruna is a Kyuubi. Her abilities and everything, her strength, her agility and all that, way better than Taro's, of course. She ends up, of course, relaying the information to Taro later on about her parents being killed, and they end up going back to the site of the dead parents. Tarawa, of course, traumatized. Haruna traumatized even more, being a younger child. So they end up trying to go back to their house, and they realize that their house was ransacked. They don't know who did it. They're assuming it was the killer. And so they're like, okay, so this place is now dangerous. Tarawa's realizing we can't stay here. Someone's probably aware that that you might be one as well. We can't risk it. We're gonna have to go into hiding. So unfortunately for them, they end up having to go into hiding into a bunch of caves a bunch of times, some huts, and of course, while at the same time, Haruna has to keep her QB marks hidden with makeup as they try to get along the way and everything like that. And again, Tarawa might be one later on. I'm still working out the details for her. She's been a character that we just started just now planning out bit by bit. So there might be a point where she's a QB. There might be a point where she's not. I don't know yet. I'm still working that part out. But just assume for now at least, Haruna is the only one who is the QB, and she is trying her best to stay hidden in terms of the QB marking. She cannot have her tails or anything out or anything of the sort. So unfortunately, obviously, again, well, fortunately and unfortunately, they don't know what happened to the killer. They don't know where he went. They don't know who did it. They don't know the face or anything like that. So they are at a loss for any answers. They have nothing. So they are currently right now just wandering the land, trying to just find a place where they can just be quietly left alone and not have to worry about anybody like that. At the time, of course, Haruna ends up becoming much colder in her childhood. The only time where she's actually soft is when she ends up meeting her cat, which is unfortunately is not part of this design because you need the twin tails in order to... I can't have the cat and the twin tails for her. These little twin tails here. Can't have that along with the cat on the head, unfortunately. Hopefully, maybe that gets rectified in the next Empires game, whenever the hell that thing happens. But yeah, the only time she ends up running into a cat, of course, that is going to be Ichi. She ends up having a soft spot for that cat, as she is someone who basically lost her smile, lost her will, and everything like that because her two parents are obviously gone. The two people who can take care of her are gone. But obviously, Tarawa tries to be that big sister where she can just do whatever she can to provide for her and her sister. So she ends up, of course, still being soft and not really harsh or anything towards Tarawa, but she does end up still being very cold and like a little isolated and everything for a long while. And then there are moments where she herself starts to train, starts to get stronger bit by bit. Gah! And eventually, she ends up noticing there's a post. At the time, when she gets a little bit older, around the age of 18 to 17, I'm still working out those details as well. Around that age, she ends up noticing there is a notice for volunteers to take part in a rebellion that is happening. A rebellion is happening, and that is the Kaijima Rebellion, which starts up the entirety of the story. That is where the story actually starts up. Is during the Kaijima Rebellion, where Kaijima are sick and tired, even the Ninsu, but mostly the Kaijima. Some Ninsu take part in it, but mostly the Kaijima because they're sick and tired of the humans, and they are basically being, well, if this is how you're going to treat us, we're going to rebel, we're going to make this country our own, and you got nothing to say about it, you will be the lesser beings and all that. So, in terms of power scaling, Kaijima are technically at least a little bit stronger than humans, but humans are still very strong, very resilient, as you have seen many times with, like, especially in even these games, like Warriors games. When they go up against gods or demons, the humans are always, like, they catch the others off guard, basically. They catch everybody off guard. They're like, oh, damn, I didn't realize humans could be this strong or this passionate or this, like, persistent and all that stuff. So that's basically what happens with that. They end up, so they're basically still on the scaling, sort of similar to Kaijima, so they're kind of on the same playing field, but Kaijima are a little bit stronger. So Haruna, of course, tries to be one of those people to take part in this thing because even though she does not like humans all that much, she doesn't really care about the whole, like, Kaijima Rebellion, them trying to earn their way and everything. She's basically just trying to look out for number one, and of course Tarawa, I guess you could say her number two. And of course Ichi, her other number two. But at the end of the day, she's trying to just look after for herself and her family and everything that she has left. So she ends up trying to just join the humans because the humans are actually offering rewards, unlike the Kaijima who are just trying to offer their freedom and everything. But like I said, Haruna becomes a lot more colder, she becomes a lot more selfish and everything. So at the time, she doesn't really care about all that kind of stuff. At the time, she's just trying to... Basically, she's just trying to stay alive. She's trying to survive as best she can. So without Taro even knowing as well, she ends up taking part in this rebellion to help out the humans against the Kaijima. Technically, Taro at the time, who is very strong on her views towards humans as well, it would be probably someone who ends up allying herself with the Kaijima. But she actually had no idea about it because they're around outskirts and everything, so she ends up just basically staying away from it. At the same time as well, she kind of just wants to be able to just not risk her own life because she thinks, well, who else will be there for Haruna if I'm not there? So, yeah, so Haruna basically, without her say-so, ends up going to the Kaijima Rebellion to go help take part in it. At the time when they realize, some Imperials end up realizing, like, this girl's really young. I don't think we Imperials would look really good if we had little kids doing this. So, of course, at the time, she kind of actually ends up being, like, denied at the front gate, basically, like, sorry, you can't take part in this stuff. We're not trying to look bad because, and by the way, the Imperials in this story are also those kinds of humans that are racist and everything, and they look out for themselves and all that kind of stuff. So they're like, we got to care about our image here. We cannot have you on the battlefield risking your life. What if people see this? What if they report to other people like, oh no, we can't, like, oh no, the Imperials are having children do this. Sorry, we can't have you do that. Unless you're very experienced or under someone specifically, we cannot have you around here, so you got to leave. So Haruna starts to get a little more mouthy with the person, as showing that, like, trying to convince them that they can fight. She wants to be able to take part in this. She wants to be able to earn the money. Of course, the Imperial ends up getting even more and more frustrated with them, but then, lo and behold, here comes Light, and here comes even his father, Azura, who I will also eventually show as well. See that this girl looks, she's in, at the beginning of it, she's hooded, she has some rags on her and everything. And so, it already shows, like, she's just, like, a street rat, basically. And that's one of the reasons why they're like, we can't have you here. You're a street rat, but you're still a child, so we can't look bad because we Imperials need to keep our image for the people. But so Azura ends up basically playing it off, being like, oh, you're the person I hired to protect my son. He literally just that is the goodness and quick thinking of Azura, who I will show, who is Light's dad, like I mentioned. That is basically the quick thinking of Azura. He's like, he sees that this girl looks desperate. He sees the image of her. It looks like she might have some teary eye in her, like she wants to be able to participate so she can get the money and everything. So, like, she still shows an angry face and, like, persistent face, but she starts to get a little teary-eyed. Azura is very, like, he's able to see, like, the smallest of things. So he ends up seeing that she's, like, getting a little teary-eyed and everything. So he ends up just being like, oh, so you're that person that was, that I hired to protect my son. And, of course, at first, Harness is like, what? Wait, what? And then Azura's trying to, like, egg her on, like, do you want to take part in this or not? I'm trying to help you here. Like, he's aware that, like, she looks capable. She's got that image of her that looks like she's able to hold her own in a fight. He's perfectly aware of it, so he's like, you want to take part in this? You better follow along with me here. And then she ends up pretending to be all high and mighty, like, yeah, that's what I was, like, trying to get the point of, but this stupid Imperial here wasn't letting me in and trying to let me explain or anything. So, eventually, she ends up being let in. And yes, Azura actually ends up being like, hey, I know I made that an act, but you do look like a very strong, reliable type. I can tell by the weapon you're holding, which is the weapon she currently has right now, which was her father's, believe it or not. She actually has a similar weapon. We actually ended up putting that in for her 2021 design. And if I remember, I'll be sure to put that up as well so y'all can see. We basically kept the same kind of formula with the boomerang and everything, the bladed boomerang. That's going to be Haruna's go-to weapon when she's younger. I don't know what her weapon's going to be when she's older. I either might have her just keep it, or maybe let her have it for maybe one of the kids. I know her granddaughter isn't going to have it for Legacy of the Hybrid. She's going to have, like, some steel bat, but maybe the daughter will have one. I don't know yet, but yeah. So he could see that she's strong. She could see that she's very, like she's very powerful and everything. She's able to hold that gigantic weapon on her back and everything, and be able to swing it with perfect ease and all that. So I'm rubbing my eye because my eyes, I've been recording like four or five videos straight right now. So he ends up being like, you could actually take part in this job and be there for my son, be his bodyguard and everything. And if you do, before she's able to before she's able to decline the offer, he actually says, I'll make it even more worth your while. Because Azura is not really, like, worried about, like, the pay or anything like that. He's actually just trying to just, like, quell the rebellion and everything, but try to do it in a more peaceful manner without trying to kill any Kaijima and everything. We'll go more in depth with that later. He says, I'll even offer you my little share of the reward if you do it. So you get your share as well as mine. So then, obviously, dollar signs or gold ends up showing up in Haruna's eye. She's like, okay, I guess I'll take care of your son then while I do this. I'll make sure nothing happens to him. I'll make sure he lives and all that kind of stuff. So then, at first, Haruna ends up being kind of rude and and cold and cautious around Light and everything. Of course, they're complete strangers. So she's just like, all right, I'm going to have to try to be a little careful around this dude because I don't want him to discover me as a Kyuubi. There is one thing that Nintsu cannot hide, and it is the eyes. The eyes are actually something that Nintsu have that are unique to them. Like, unfortunately, I can't show it right here, but she has one of the more, like, animal-like eyes and everything like that. So her eyes are a bit different. She has, like, more, like, instead of, like, round pupils, she actually ends up having, like, or whatever it is in the center of the eye, I don't know. Hers are more, like, straight lines, like, sharp straight lines, like, oval-shaped kind of way. To where I'll probably be able to show it like in a picture or something so y'all can see what I mean. But yeah, if you look at that picture, that's basically how the eyes are kind of like for most Nitsu, especially ones like Kyuubi who have those kinds of eyes. So that's one thing that she cannot hide. That's why, hence, she ended up having a hood over her so people can't see that. So that ends up happening, and she ends up being kind of cold towards him and everything like that. But then Light ends up kind of like just slowly trying to peek up down her up her hood and everything, like, are you gonna eventually, like, show your face to me? You're the one who's supposed to protect me and everything, or something like that. Light, by the way, is completely against this. He is not someone who's, like, worried about getting, like, protected or anything like that. So, Light's just kind of like, alright, if you're gonna be the person who protects me, so, like, he's obviously, like I said, he's against it. He doesn't feel like he needs a bodyguard or anything like that. He feels he's perfectly fine the way he is. He can handle it. He's been in battles before, or he's been in fights before in small little skirmishes, but this is his real true battle. But, like, he gets kind of frustrated with Haruna because she's acting, like, really quiet, very cold towards him. So he's like, at least show me your face so I can at least see you, the person who's going to try to protect me or something like that. So eventually he ends up getting kind of frustrated because she keeps trying to hide her face. And then he ends up just taking the hood off completely, and without her realizing that he would do that. And then she ends up, like, shooting up her eyes at him, like, in shock. And he's like, oh, so you're a Nintsu. And it actually ends up showing in Light's eyes as well that his eyes are not of humans as well. Light's eyes are of dragon-like eyes. They're very similar to the Kyuubis, but they are kind of like dragon-like eyes. And then Haruna's like, wait, you're a Kaijima. You have eyes like mine, in a way. Like, my Kyuubi eyes are basically like your dragon eyes. So are you Nintsu? And he's like, no, I'm Kaijima. Part Kaijima. So basically they end up having this whole conversation. Haruna starts lightening up to him a little tiny bit here and there. And she's like, I'm still gonna keep my, like, cautions about you, but I guess since you're not a full-blown human, I guess I don't have to worry about, like, being all that cold and quiet towards you. And then, hence, her starts being a little bit more nicer and everything, and then as she ends up being more and more with Light, again, she tries to be very protective because she's like, hey, I need to make sure I make this money, but then she ends up having a bit of a relationship with Light at the same time, and then another human ends up coming into the picture, who is Shine, and this is where the birth of the Trio de Mischief comes in. This is where Haruna, as she starts spending more and more time with them during the rebellion, because the rebellion takes a week, if not weeks, to quell and everything. So she ends up having some more bonding time between Light and Shine, and then eventually these three end up really liking one another, and then Haruna starts to smile a little bit more, and she ends up kind of like lowering her guard even more towards the three. And then she ends up slowly but surely starting showing her more goofier side and all that. I'm trying to make sure I don't go on with this too long, but yeah. So Haruna ends up being like more of that uppy kind of character that you all normally see from like the gameplay, which you could probably hear her voice possibly. Like her being like very like high-pitched and very hyperactive and everything like that. And that's basically how she is throughout the majority of the story. So I don't want to go too in-depth because I don't want to do any spoiling for the actual story, but I did want to at least mention some of the backstory for her, if not the entirety of the damn thing that I just did. But yeah, so for those of you who are like, damn, she seems really cold. Why is she always so chipper and everything in the art and like even the gameplay? Because she doesn't end up being that. She literally ends up being that only at the beginning of the story, and then she ends up being that, like being the more hyper, chipper, like mischievous kind of girl later on in the story. So that's basically why she's always like looking all that kind of stuff. But I think that is a good stopping point there, everybody. If you all did enjoy the showcase for the best girl Haruna, then by all means be sure to smash the like button right now. Comment down below your thoughts on the character, and if you're new to the channel and you like the content that you see, then be sure to hit that sub button. If you want to support the channel further than that, you could join the Discord, the Huaweis of Jigoku Discord server. From time to time, I will show my characters on there, and you can also meet some other awesome people in the community as well. But if you want to support the channel further than that, you can join the Patreon, like these awesome people that you see on the screen right now. You can join at the $1 tier or $5 tier, have your name up on every single video, and I'll be sure to give you guys more priority when it comes to game suggestions and stuff, since you guys help me with the channel financially. So with all that being said, thank you all very much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. Farewell.
secret